All right, all right. Welcome to another episode of Another Not Guilty. My name is Dallas Gutman. I'm a public defender in Cincinnati, Ohio.
My name is Rachel McKay. I'm also a public defender in Cincinnati, Ohio. I work with Dallas, and we have a great guest today. We are here with Felipe. Felipe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name's Felipe Gonzalez, and I'm a public defender in Anne Arundel County, Maryland.
Where is that?
So it's like a 20-minute drive east of DC, about a 20-minute drive south of Baltimore. Not even that.
East of DC, south. You know what? I'm from California, Felipe, and I just don't know East Coast geography like I should.
Anne Arundel County is a county that has the city of Annapolis in it, and it's right on the Chesapeake Bay. So
Okay.
that's
Cool.
kind of where it's at.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to pretend like I know.
So,
Oh, the Chesapeake Bay, gorgeous
yes,
this time of
yes.
year.
Would you say
Mhm.
DMV?
Yeah, it's DMV, but uh, it's when people say DMV, they usually mean like the DC area. Annapolis is far out enough that I don't really consider it DMV.
Okay.
It's DMV adjacent.
I just want to use that
Yes.
acronym because learned it
Because
people say that.
yeah, you sounded cool there.
Thank you.
I mean, you are
Thank you.
cool, but you also sounded cool.
Nice.
Felipe, did you guys go like look at the flower buds yesterday or whatever? That
We
sounded
were
really bad. Sorry. Did you go see the cherry blossoms yesterday? We had a phone conversation with Felipe yesterday, so I know he was planning on doing some type of outing.
Yeah, no, we were gonna go to DC, but there's a lot of tourists, so instead we
Yeah.
went to Fort McHenry up in Baltimore. It was a good time.
What is that
Cool.
like a learning experience of like history?
I mean, kinda like we were just treated like a picnic, and then at some point I forced the kids to check out Fort McHenry, but they seemed kind of into it.
That's
So
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool.
Great.
All right. After this, I'll Google what Fort McHenry is too.
Yeah, I'm doing it live.
I know. I promise you, Felipe. I know some things.
Okay.
Just nothing you've talked about
We're
so
about
far.
to get more into our lane now.
Yeah, well, it's the battle that inspired the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh,
Okay,
the
great.
song?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I know it well. Let's sing it, and we'll
No,
harmonize.
no.
You take the high note, Felipe. If I'm too loud for you, I noticed that when I started my intro, you like flinched. If I'm too loud, there are, I think I have to do that. Sorry, to the right, you can turn people's mics down if we're too loud for you.
Can I actually turn Felipe up?
Yeah, so you can turn Felipe up.
Sorry. Where?
Do you see the? Oh, maybe it's just me.
Because you're in charge.
Oh, I can
Yeah,
see
so
you
I'll turn
moving
myself
mine.
down. Yeah, I'll
There
turn
you go.
myself down.
Can you turn
And-
Felipe up and me down a little bit?
You want to be down?
Well, I'm cool actually.
You're at such a good volume. Okay, is that
Okay,
better
yeah,
for you
either way.
guys?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay.
Great.
All right. So
Can
you're
everyone
public
hear each other?
everyone can hear each other? Okay.
Okay.
Sound check.
Okay, great.
So
So
Felipe,
Felipe,
you're
you're
a
a public defender.
Yes, I'm a public defender. Yes.
How long have you been a public defender?
I just hit 8 years.
Great. All
the
at the same
sweet
office.
spot.
Yeah, it's always been with the same office. And I clerked for this office during law school. So technically, I guess you could say it's been, 10 years, but that was just for the summers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Pretty much
That
10.
might be my path. I don't know. We'll see 5 years from now where I'm
Yeah.
at. Okay, Felipe. So we have a very interesting case today. Why don't you tell us what the charges are?
So my client was charged with home invasion, first-degree burglary, armed robbery, first-degree assault, second-degree assault, reckless endangerment, and theft.
Whoa.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of charges.
Yeah.
That's like one of those charges, when you like get you can see the piece of paper that your client's charged with, and you can see kind of like the progression of the night, like an OVI, a hit skip, a seatbelt, a speeding, a red light. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I see what happened here. That's kind of what that sounds like.
Into the OVI, into the resisting, into the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Into
You're
the
driving
search
drunk, you hit
incident.
something, you might. All right. So we have a lot of charges here. Tell us a little bit about how you first met your client.
So I read the statement of charges, and shortly after the case was assigned to me, and kind of read it, and I was like, oh, that's bad. And because the state's theory of the case, or what they thought had happened, was basically that my client at like 2:15 in the night, scaled the exterior walls of an apartment building all the way up to the third floor balcony, um, went in through the sliding glass door, and then got a knife out of the complaining witness's kitchen, and then went to their bedroom to rob them.
Mm.
You know, just the statement of charge. I didn't have any discovery, but just looking at it, I was like, well, that's bad because they found him. The police found him in the complaining witness's bedroom, and so I mean, the complaining witness said, "Yeah, that's the guy that robbed me or tried to rob me." Um, so I was like, "Ooh, I don't know how we're gonna figure this one out." But I go see the client, um, and they bring him into sort of like the attorney booth so we can talk, and they had to bring him in a wheelchair, um, because in the process of whatever it is that happened that night, the complaining witness used a knife and stabbed my client through the leg. And so later on, the body worn camera showed that there was a lot of blood in the bedroom, but my client had been stabbed so badly he had to go to the hospital for a couple of days. They had to do surgery on his leg.
So police found your client there at the you call him complaining witness, at the complaining witness's house.
Yes, they get there. Complaining witness opens the door, says, "Hey, he's still here. He's there." And they go into the bedroom and they find my client on the floor, in
Okay.
a pool of blood.
So the state's theory is that your client scaled a wall, broke into someone's house, grabbed one of their knives. The complaining witness then took the knife and then stabbed your client.
Right. So the state's version was that the the complaining witness woke up, and was able to, at the right time, was able to rush my client, disarm him, and they struggled, and that's how he got stabbed.
Where does the theft come in? There's a theft, right?
Yeah, so this became an issue during trial, but items were recovered and put into evidence. Property of the complaining witness. It was a watch and like a gold bracelet, and the state was saying that, oh, those items that were recovered from my client, but there was no evidence to show that, to support that. So we argued about that, but their argument was that the items, the watch and the bracelet, were what was stolen. That was the theft.
Okay. Where does the assault come in?
Well, the assault is the allegation that he had a knife and was threatening. Oh, and the complaining witness had a very small cut on his left arm that he said was because my client, while holding the knife, I guess my client was upset by the complaining witnesses not moving fast enough to give him property, that he sort of poke stabbed him in the left arm, and that would have been the assault.
Okay. So
All
client is
right.
bleeding on the floor, taken to the hospital, and PW has a nick on their arm. And
Yeah.
client's charged with assault.
Yes.
Cool.
And the home invasion because he supposedly entered the home with the purpose of committing a robbery.
Okay. So home invasion's like a burglary.
Yeah, so it's basically our first degree burglary, which is breaking and entering into the dwelling of another with the intent to commit theft, but the added element of committing a crime of violence.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. So you meet your client. He's in a wheelchair. Is he locked up?
Wait, can I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Go McKay.
So what is your client looking at with these charges? What time are they facing?
Oh. Home invasion is 25, first degree burglary is 20, armed robbery is 20, regular robbery is 15, assault first is 25, assault second is 10, necklace is 5, and the theft would have been over $100, would have been 6 months. But a lot of that would have merged, especially the armed robbery. A lot of the lower elements would have merged into the armed robbery. So I think it would have been the home invasion 25 and the armed robbery 20, I think is what he was looking at.
How old's your client?
At the time, he's 28 years old.
Okay. That's a long time for
Yeah.
anyone. For a
Yeah.
28-year-old. Yeah, that's a long time. Okay, so you meet your client and he's in a wheelchair. Is he locked up?
Yes, he is locked up. So the night of the event was August 18th. They take him to the hospital. He's there for a couple of days, and I believe on August 23rd is when they serve him with the arrest warrant. So he had been held at the detention center since August of 23.
Okay, and what does your client say about these charges? Well, first of all, how's your client doing when you meet him?
So, I mean, my client, I mean, he's a small guy. I mean, he weighed like maybe 130 pounds, 135 pounds, not very tall, thin. And when I meet him, he very quickly, he only speaks Spanish. I speak Spanish. I'm a native speaker. And I introduce myself and I'm just like, hey, these are the charges. And as soon as I'm done sort of explaining what he's accused of, he goes, that's not what happened. Like he is very clear, like that is not what happened. And I'm like, okay, great. This is your opportunity to tell me your version of events. Go ahead.
So, what did your client say happened then?
So my client's version is that he had been staying at that apartment complex. So the complex is like, I want to say like 4 or 5 buildings that they all look the same, but they're sort of in a circle around the parking lot. And he's like, I've been staying with my brothers who live in that complex. I get there after work. I get there late around 9 or 10 o'clock, I think. I have dinner with my brothers, I shower, we have drinks. They go to bed once the booze runs out, and I decided that I was going to see if I could buy more booze from a nearby liquor store, if I could find a liquor store. And so he walks to where there's an intersection where he thinks there might be a place he can buy alcohol, but he sees that it's closed. So he walks back. And when he gets back to the apartment complex around midnight, he sees a person, a guy that he has seen around the apartment complex before, just like 2 or 3 times, but somebody that he recognized, and says, they start talking in Spanish, and the guy sees my client smoking a black and mild. He's like, "Hey, can I have a cigarette?" My client says, "I don't have any more," but he lets him have some puffs of the black and mild. And while they're talking, my client says, "Yeah, I was looking for alcohol, but I don't have any, so I'm probably just going to go to bed."
So these two
And
guys are known to each other.
like they know of each other. It's like if you cross paths with somebody at your apartment, maybe you said hi, but like they're not friends. They're not like they don't know each other. They just know
Okay.
that they live in the area.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but I mean, they both speak Spanish, so they're talking to each other. And then the complaining witness says, "Well, hey, if you want drinks or whatever, I have drinks in my apartment. We can hang out. And if that's cool." And my client, he's like, "Oh yeah." I mean, he's already buzzed. He's like, "Why not?" And he says that at about 12:15, 12:30, they go up into complaining witness's apartment. Complaining witness invites him in, opens the apartment door, and they walk in. And he says that the complaining witness, made drinks. They had drinks, couple of shots, that he like cut limes. And then he invited him to his bedrooms, like, "Hey, you want to hang out? We can, watch a movie." Um, my client at this point is, like, "Okay, yeah, sure." He seems like he's just a friendly guy. And they go into the guy's bedroom and they're watching the movie. At some point, my client decides to have another black and mild. So he goes out onto the balcony, and complaining witness goes with him. They hang out on the balcony. Client goes back inside, is like, "Hey, I think I'm going to go home." Complaining witness says, "No, no, just hang out a little bit longer. Just hang out. We're having a good time." Client says, "Fine." They have another drink. And back in the bedroom, and he's on the floor. Complaining witness is on his bed. And at some point, my client passes out or goes to sleep. And the next thing, at this point, my client, I mean, he's telling me this, and at this point, he starts to get very upset. He doesn't want to look me in the eyes. And I think I know what he's about to say, based on everything that he said so far. But I didn't, prime him or say anything to him. I said, "Hey, I get it. It's difficult, whatever happened, but you got to tell me." And, he's he tells me that the next thing he remembers, he's being woken up by the complaining witness lying next to him and performing fellatio on him. That
Mm.
that his shorts had been pulled down and the guy was performing fellatio on him. And so my client, you know, hits the guy, pushes him off, and says, well, the police are going to know about this, is pulling up his shorts. And that's when complaining witness kicks him or pushes him. My client goes flying into the closet and he turns and he sees the complaining witness with a knife in his hand, not the same knife that he used to cut the lines, a different knife. And they start fighting over the knife. At some point, my client is stabbed through the leg.
And that's how the complaining witness got nicked too, in that
That's what
knife.
I think. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no testimony as to like how that happened from my client. The complaining witness said, "Oh yeah, he stabbed me," but
So your client is the victim then
in
in
this
this
case,
case.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
really tough. What did you think? Like, what were you feeling when he was telling you the story?
I mean, I was shocked. It wasn't what I was expecting,
Hmm.
and but I had no reason not to believe him. And
It
I
is
mean,
kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes your clients will tell you stories and you're like, I don't know, but that is so detailed and different than what happened that it would be kind of hard to believe that somebody, plus it's like not to use an evidentiary term, but it's a statement against self-interest, right? You don't want to tell people stuff like, yeah, you got sexually assaulted,
right. And I mean, and in the process of like telling his version of events, like he did go into detail. He did say all these things that I was like, that's a lot of, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've had clients say, oh no, I was somewhere else or that wasn't me. And, you'll see something that just kind of shows that that's very unlikely. There was his entire statement was, there was nothing that I had seen yet to suggest that that was not possible or probable. And so, and again, his demeanor while he was telling me this, I really did believe him because you could tell how much he was struggling to have to talk about it.
Yeah, that must
Hmm.
have been really tough to hear from a client and for him to tell you. Really
Yeah.
vulnerable. Plus, after you like just meeting him in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here,
Yeah,
tell me about the worst day of your life.
right. That's
Hmm.
kind of hard as a public defender, right? We're not chosen and we have to like really build rapport really quickly and with people who don't know us. Just like, hey, you need to tell me this.
Right. And, you know, thankfully I do speak Spanish because I don't know if I had been able to do that quickly if I'd had to use interpreters.
Right. Or he may not have been as forthcoming if there
E-
were two people in the room.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you are meeting him in jail the uh talking about what happened. What's the next setting? Do you guys try to do a bond hearing or what's your next move?
So I didn't even get into the case until the end of October. So the incident was August 18th. He's taken to the detention center on the 23rd. He did have a bond review, but it was at the district court level. I work at the circuit court level. So one of my colleagues did the bail review, and the judge at the bail review held him without bond. But they also noted they were like, there seems to be a lot more going on in this case, just based on the statement of charges and how my client is the one with the life-threatening injuries. Which I thought was interesting that even the judges at that point were kind of like, I don't know, something seems off. But he's indicted September 15th, and then the public defender enters the case October 30th. So I see him shortly after that, and the next setting was the status conference in the circuit court on November 17th. And all we did that day was pick a trial.
Okay.
So he didn't
So,
get a public defender until he was indicted.
So the way our system works is that anybody who's charged with a crime, generally they go straight to the district court, which is our bench court, our lower trial court, where they do the majority of the bail reviews. And the public defender will represent just about everybody who's charged at that stage. I recall that at that time in the year, there was like a huge backlog of cases And so I think that's why, because normally we are representing people very quickly at either stage. I think that's the reason why there was a bit of a delay in um, our entry for that particular case. But based on what I heard from the bail review at the district court, I had serious doubts that he would get another bail review or that he would even be released prior, because of the nature of the charges and the fact that he didn't have like a good fixed address. And so we didn't ask for another one
Okay.
All right.
So he
you're
was in
just-
while the case was pending?
the entire time. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're setting it for trial. So then what does your pretrial investigation look like? What I guess we'll start with the discovery.
So I get the discovery. It's a couple of police officers' reports, the detective, the lead detective's sort of report, the radio calls, the 911 sort of logs, and a couple of pictures, and that's about it. But I don't recall exactly when, but at one point, one of my colleagues and I, we went to the apartment complex to see sort of the layout of the apartments, because the state's theory, the detective's theory, was that there was, based on how the exterior of the apartment building was constructed, it had like a concrete lattice work that theoretically you could put somebody's feet and hands and they could scale the exterior. That was their theory.
Yeah, because
But-
scaling an apartment complex sounds crazy to me.
To the third floor.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm
It
not
just
going to do
sounds
anyone on
like,
the
why
first
wouldn't
floor.
you like home invade the first floor?
I'm not going to do anyone on the second floor.
Yeah.
I'm going to home invade the third floor,
Yeah.
all the way to the left, just to prove
Yeah.
I can.
And that's what my colleague and I saw. Like we saw the exterior, like the ground level. Like there's a lot of stuff just laying out there. And then on the second floor, it's the same thing. There's just a lot of stuff laying out there. And then the third floor, we were looking up, you can't see anything up there. So if that's your target, it seems kind of odd. And the pictures in the discovery, it was the same. There was just a lot of stuff in the back, and it just seems an odd choice for somebody to scale all the way to the top. And so, we looked at it, and the gaps in the concrete were not very big. It just seemed not an ideal way to climb the exterior. And
Not
but
ideal.
not ideal. And
Not how
My-
I would do it.
yeah. And then we actually talked to my client's family members, and we're like, hey, do you remember this day? And they're like, yeah, no, he was here. He got off work. And we didn't tell them what he said. We just like, hey, what time did he get here? And their version of events lined up with the clients. And they were like, yeah,
were they willing to testify for you?
no. They had a lot of obligations, since they weren't gonna testify. Again, like having talked to my client, like he remembered all these details, and I figured it wouldn't be bad that they didn't testify. But everything they said confirmed what our client said, and that was good enough for me. That was about as much like investigation that we did. Everything else was just going through the body-worn camera and reading the reports.
Yeah, so tell us about do you have a question, Rachel?
So,
Rachel?
so that discovery you get could corroborate either story.
So yes and no. My client, I don't remember exactly when, but he told me that he's the one that called 911. And the CW is saying, no, I'm the one that called 911. Well, in the radio logs for 911, there was a note that said that it was unclear whether or not the suspect was still on the scene due to a language barrier.
Hmm.
And if the complaining witness speaks English and he said everything in English, like why would there be a language barrier? Isn't it more likely that my client, who only speaks Spanish, is the one with the language barrier? So I saw that and I thought, you know what? I think that corroborates my client's version, at least him being the one calling 911.
What did sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say also, like in the body worn camera, you can see the apartment, the inside of the apartment. Nothing is out of place.
Hmm.
And in the video of the complaining witness, like when you see the bedroom doesn't look like it's been rummaged through or anything's missing. The only thing that looks out of place is where my client was found bloodied. So I just, I didn't believe that he had been rummaging around.
It's not giving third floor break in.
No, no, not at all.
So, just to recap, you did a site visit and you saw that it would be difficult to get up to the third floor on this concrete lattice, and the body worn didn't show anything. It showed that the house or apartment likely was not rummaged through. And you also got some type of evidence that confirmed or corroborated that your client calling 911.
Yeah. And also, my client, at some point while he's still in the hospital, he is visited by the lead detective. And the detective's like, hey, like, we're here investigating. Do you want to talk to us? And my client tells the detective, yeah, I want to talk to you because you need to know that something weird happened to me that night. Um, but the detective doesn't speak Spanish, so they're using language line. And the detective, advises my client, like, hey, like, if you're going to talk to me, you need to be advised that you have the right to a lawyer. A lawyer can be helpful. And so my client in Spanish says, well, if you're telling me that I need a lawyer, then I want a lawyer. And so the detective hears that and says, "Oh, he said he wanted a lawyer after I asked him if he wanted to talk
Yeah.
to me." You know, how
Yeah.
they framed it as if though my client wanted to hide something, which is just that my client is unsophisticated and is saying, "Well, if you say I need a lawyer, then I guess I need a lawyer."
Right.
Yeah, and both are true. He needs a lawyer and he has something to say to the detective because he's been charged and he was sexually assaulted.
Yeah, but I think also technically, like, the fact that your client said he wanted a lawyer and they stopped questioning him is the right thing to do, because you don't want, the opposite of that situation.
Right.
So
And
sucks in your case, but is what you want cops to do.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
but
it's also, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the police officers, my client still volunteered that complaining witness had invited him to drinks,
Yeah.
and the detective called the complaining witness shortly after that and asked him one question, basically like, "Hey, did you invite him in for drinks?" And the complaining witness said no, and that
You're
was
like,
it.
case closed.
And that's just it. Yeah. Because where or where the client is also a victim, here it's a lot easier for the cops to say, oh, he asked for a lawyer. That's that. We don't have to do anything further to investigate why this person has life-threatening injuries and the complaining witness does not.
Their theory was that complaining witness got the best of my client. That was it.
Yeah. And it goes against their confirmation bias, right?
Yeah. And this 911 log, you just have the log, but you don't have the call.
No, and we subpoenaed the Annapolis police, Annapolis fire. Like, we issued the subpoenas, and they just couldn't find these calls. Like,
Is that
mu-
normal?
it's
Like,
not normal.
this should be an exculpatory call. If the complaining witness speaks English and client does not, and there's a language barrier on the call,
Yeah.
and
It's Brady
suddenly they don't
material,
have the
right?
call, that's unreal.
Yeah.
No, again, we subpoenaed and we called and we never got it. And even like months after the trial was over, I got a discovery disclosure for the 911s, and it was still just the same thing I'd already gotten, just the radio logs.
Do you usually get the calls?
Yeah, normally we get more calls than we ever want. And
So in
Yeah.
every other case, you have every call ever. And in this case, you only want the call, no
How
call.
weird.
no
Yeah.
call. Yeah.
That
Weird.
is crazy.
Was there anything else in discovery, or was there anything in discovery that was notable to you?
No, there was something. Okay, so one of the officers went to the neighbor because the neighbor to the complaining witness's apartment had ring cameras. And so their body worn camera showed the ring camera footage at about 2:15, which is when this supposedly happened, or when my client supposedly broke in. And they only looked at 2:15 to about 2:45. And in both, so they had a ring camera for the front and the back. And both cameras picked up the EMTs arriving, the police on the ground floor looking around. It captured all that. But they only looked at the 2:15 time frame. They did
Mm.
not go back before 2 o'clock in the morning. And my client, his version was that like, no, I was there invited in at 12:30.
So you think it would have shown him going, it was like a neighbor that was across, so it would have
Yes.
shown him going into the apartment at 12:30.
Yes.
Did you try to get the rest of that video from the neighbor?
No, by the time we were there,
it was erased.
it was
Yeah,
gone.
you got it
Yeah.
in October, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, there's nothing like a Ring camera cross-examination. You're like, was this a residential area? So that house would have had a Ring camera. So that house would have had a Ring. So that house would have. But yeah, we'll get to that later.
Oh, Ring cameras. Yeah. Side note, I had a case once. It was a criminal damaging, and my client was accused of tearing a Ring camera off and like throwing it into the woods. And he's like, it wasn't me, I didn't do it.
Oh,
Sure
no.
enough, it shows him like this. And then you see the Ring camera go flying. It's like, I was like, we're gonna need to take a plea on this one. Anyway, not about me though. Not about me. So
All right. And that body camera, does it show the officers showing up to the scene?
Yeah, no, the body camera showed the officers arriving, going into the apartment, finding my client, talking to the CW, getting his statements, all that. Like I knew by the time of trial, I had transcribed and I had memorized every single second of all their body worn camera.
Mm-hmm. And the CW's story is so specific, and Klein's story is so specific, and they are completely different stories. What's CW's demeanor like on the body camera? Does he look like he's just like live, like cooking up and then this happened, and then this happened?
Yeah.
And someone took my watch.
And
He
they
throws the watch out the window.
wall.
Yeah.
This guy was like Superman. He came in and
Yeah.
I guess that'd be Spider-Man.
No, it is Spider-Man. My office, we refer to this case as Spider-Man case.
Yeah. Spider-Man. I'm not a big comic person, but I thought I would try it out.
So
It
CW
didn't land.
I mean, he definitely seemed like shocked, upset, like he was speaking quickly, and you're like, oh, I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen him before in my life. Like he was sweating and upset and everything, but I think that's because he had been caught in the middle of a sex crime and
That'll make you sweat.
Yeah,
That'll make
and
you
then
sweat,
you
right?
stab someone. Yeah.
Exactly. Like they were fighting. They were definitely fighting. And so, calling 911, he's probably freaking out. That and again, he speaks English, so he's telling all the officers this while my client is out of it. He has lost so much blood. I mean, the video of him, they're tourniqueting him and everything. He's just not making any sense. He's just begging them to save him.
That's hard to watch. Yeah. So you get the discovery, you review it, you go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Was there any pretrial motions that you had in this case?
No pretrial motions.
Did anything happen pretrial that was notable to you?
I mean, I told the state at the status conference in November, I was like, hey, like you should probably ask your complaining witness a few questions about what happened that night, because the version that I get from my client is very different from their version, the police's version. And the state's attorney kind of like, oh, kind of joking, like, what? Let me guess. He has like a shower in the corner of the bedroom, like a drain. Just kind of like, yeah, whatever about it.
What's he implying when he says that?
I think they never believed my client.
Mm-hmm.
They heard the complaining witness's version of events, and they're like, this is our version. There's no other way it could have happened. Here he is. He's in the apartment. He's bloody. It had to happen this way.
Yeah,
There's
they
no
do
alternative.
that. They do that.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And then 10 days before trial, I told the state's attorney, I was like, look, I'm telling you, my client is the victim of a sexual assault. Like, you need to talk to your CW. This is what happened. And the state's attorney was like, why would the CW lie? He's a car salesman. He's just trying to make his way through the world.
What?
Yeah, like, he has no reason to lie. I know. I know.
Listen to yourself. But also, like, what were you trying to get out of that? A dismissal? Or a deal?
Trying to get some kind, because the offer, I think, was to armed robbery and like years of prison, even though my client had no priors. His only prior was like for traffic, Uh,
Did you ever seriously consider that offer? Did you guys have a conversation about it?
I mean, I conveyed the offer. I was like, look, this is what they're offering you. And you're like, I have an obligation to tell you
Yeah.
what the offer is. I'm not saying you need to take it, but my client, he said, I did not do any of the things that they're saying I did.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I plead guilty to this? And I was
Yeah.
like, you are absolutely right. I
Yeah.
believe you. Like, I mean, this is one of those rare instances where like I 1,000% believe that my client was innocent of
Yeah.
everything.
Not just not
And
guilty. Yeah. Innocent.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
like, like we have to have a trial. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
That's
every
like when
charge,
you
not
get,
the theft, not the assault, not the every single
yeah.
charge.
nothing. Exactly.
Yeah. That's how you
Uh,
convey an offer you don't want your client to take. Listen, I have an ethical obligation to tell you
Yeah.
this. I'm not suggesting you take it. I just have to tell you ethically. I'm required to tell you. Don't do it. Let's have a trial.
I'm just
and
saying what they're saying.
and so shortly after I told the state, like, look, this is what my client said happened, and wouldn't you know, just like a day or two later, they tell me, oh, here's some, late new disclosure. This is what the complaining witness says happened. That, he got off work, he didn't go home, he went to play poker with his friends from, childhood, and he didn't get home until 11 o'clock, and he went straight to bed and never saw my client before that. Which,
That's a
go
different
ahead.
story, right? Than the original
Yeah,
story.
because so the story that he gave on the night of, he didn't mention anything about that. He just said, I was sleeping, the guy came in. But when the detective asked him a few days after talking to my client, like, what did you do that night? The CW said, no, 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 I got off work around 7. I went home and was there by 9, and I had dinner at 10. I saw my parents leave to go to work, and then I went to bed at 11. So he never mentioned, playing poker with the boys until shortly before the trial, after I told the state's attorney what my client had told.
Then he's like, I need a better story,
I
actually.
need to fix this
I
up.
need, I
Yeah,
need
he's
a
like,
better
oh.
story.
And this extra discovery disclosure of a different statement from the CW, what form does this take? Were you expecting it? Is it like supplemental at the last second? Like, what is it?
It was an email, just an email like, hey, our CW, based on what you told us, we asked him, and this is what he said.
That is so shoddy.
Can you
I hope
impeach
this
with, I
finds you
guess,
well.
yeah.
Here's some Brady.
BT Dub, he was playing poker. So this guy lives with his parents in this apartment.
Yes.
That
Yes.
somehow makes it worse. Like
Well,
what he did. I don't know why. It just makes it worse.
Well, the complainant at trial, like, mentioned that he's like, yeah, I've been living with my parents, and he's in his mid-20s, I think. And he says like, yeah, it's customary for my parents when they come home from work, early in the morning, they check on me, and I was kind of like, it seems a little weird. I don't know, but
Yeah,
okay.
that's odd. That's odd.
As far
So
as the timeline, can you clarify, were the parents alleged to have been home?
No. So the state's verdict is it's just the complaining witness in the apartment. The two parents and his 15-year-old brother left to go to work. They do like cleaning overnight and stuff like that.
mm,
So they weren't there. Um,
so he can prey on people while they're at
that was
work.
my theory.
I
That was
Yeah.
mean,
my
that's
theory.
what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come upstairs. I have some drinks and we can watch a movie in my bedroom. A woman knows if a man asks you to watch a movie in a bedroom, something
Yeah.
shady's about to go down.
So it's funny you mentioned that.
No one's watching anything.
Almost everybody in my office, I'm one of 2 men in the office. And so I went to a lot of my, female coworkers, and it was like giving them the version of events that my client gave me. Every single one of them, as soon as they heard, they're like, oh, you can come to my apartment and have drinks. And they are all like, no,
no,
stop it,
don't
stop
go,
it.
don't
They all
go.
knew.
Men don't have that same radar as women. Unfortunately, I think it's a sad comment about society, but yeah, don't go. Okay, so no pretrial motions. So now we're going to trial.
That's it.
How does your client feel about going to trial?
So shortly before the trial, I went with him to sort of go over his testimony, and And again, I just asked him like, tell me what happened, and he went into even more detail, like, and there was no difference in his versions. Like he answered all my questions. He could draw a map of the entire apartment complex. He knew when he went to where, everything. And I told him like, understand you're gonna have to explain this to 12 or more strangers. This is going to be difficult for you, but he said, he's like, I will do what I must, just like
Yeah.
he understood what he needed to do, and he was like, I'm going to testify. I didn't do anything wrong. And I think I prepared him a little too well, because when how you're always like, just answer the question asked. I'm going to ask you, you just say, and then I might ask you like, and after that, what did you do or what did you see? Only answer the question asked. It's like, what did you do? He's like, I crossed the street.
Yeah.
He
And
knows.
and
He's a
then
lawyer. He's like, I want a lawyer, and I
and
only talk. My
then
lawyer tells me to talk.
yeah.
that's good though. We like that. That's better than the alternative.
Oh yeah, no, he did not go off.
So how did you prepare him for cross then?
I mean, he basically, like, for cross of the state's witnesses or cross of my client.
No. How did you prepare your client to be crossed?
I told him that, look, the state is going to ask you questions that are designed to try to mess you up, trick you, confuse you, get you mad. Like, they're going to say a bunch of stuff and they're going to ask you questions. You are only required to answer yes or no. I mean, if you know the answer, just answer the question asked. Like, you don't have to, you know, explain everything. Like, my job is, if there's some sort of misunderstanding about what did or didn't happen, my job is going to be to ask you the questions after they're done.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he was just like, I have no reason to not answer the questions because I know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you were feeling comfortable having your client testify then?
I absolutely. I had
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no
I guess he kind of
concerns.
has to if your theory is something that only he's saying.
Yeah, that's what's so hard about this case is that what they're saying happened like could track with the discovery, and then what happened is something that's only going to come out through your client. And it would make total sense when your client said it, but there's nothing in their discovery to suggest that this is what client's about to say happened on the stand.
Right,
And
like he didn't
I
even make
almost
the
feel
statement
for
to police.
prosecutors in those situations because like usually our clients don't testify. Usually the testimony, if it happens, is oftentimes more nuanced or more on I don't know, something more specific. But to have a client get on the stand and say something completely different happened that also tracks with the discovery, if I'm the state, I'm like,
Uh-oh.
well, are you
Now
sure?
they know how we feel. You did what?
And that's what happened.
So yeah, we're going into trial. So preparing for voir dire, who are you looking for on your jury?
So I try to get as much of a cross-section diverse jury as you can get in Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, what's the county like?
It's
Like, what are
diverse.
your jurors usually like?
It's oh God, I haven't looked at the statistics lately, but I believe it's like,
Maybe just from your personal experience.
it's
Yeah.
like 60, it's probably like 70% white. I believe it's like 15% black population. And I guess some smaller percentages is Hispanic, but it's mostly white. I mean, Anne Arundel is it's just south of Baltimore City, so the north part of the county is still very dense, high population, more urban than the south of the county, which is very rural. I mean, it's farmland south of Anne Arundel County. So, I mean, you get a lot of that. But we also have like the Naval Academy, we have Fort Meade, NSA. So we have a lot of that, and a lot of attorneys. So
Sounds
it's
like a mix.
it is a mix. And I think we're able to get very good juries a lot of the time, but sometimes you don't. But I that's what I usually look for in a jury. I want I want men and I want women. And just for like the conversation we had, like a lot of guys are probably not going to understand when a guy is like, "Oh, just come to my place. We can have some drinks." I feel like more women are going to say like, "No, no, I know what that looks like."
Right.
Um, and I try to have, diverse as possible, age, uh, also, and, education levels. We get a lot of that information. So we just try to have as much difference possible because you might have that one juror who has that one experience who can say something.
Yeah. So what type of questions did you ask? Uh, how'd your voir dire go?
So we the way our voir dire is done is the judges ask it. We give them proposed voir dire, and our courthouse has about 30, it's like 30 questions that they ask for almost all of the cases that cover all the constitutional issues, like do you know anybody, the right to remain silent, all that stuff. And I usually use those for anything that doesn't have anything very, unique about the case.
So
For this,
you don't ask any questions, but you can propose questions.
yeah, we actually are currently piloting a program where the attorneys lead the voir dire.
It's funny because the last interview we did, it was the same. It was the judge led voir dire, but I don't think that they could ask. They couldn't. I don't think they could submit questions. I think that the judge just did it. So
Oh, no,
you're
Yeah, I think
really
they could
not.
just ask follow-ups. Yeah.
Yeah. Did the judge use any of your questions?
Yeah, so I had three questions that I wanted the judge to ask, which was, is there anybody in the jury who believes that, or who does not believe that men can be the victims of sexual assault? Are there any jurors that will be uncomfortable discussing issues of a sexual nature? And are there any jurors who will be uncomfortable discussing issues of a sexual nature, men with men?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and it was funny because the judge came out and said like, I see the usual questions that we always see, and I gotta say, Mr. Gonzalez, I was not expecting three of your questions.
Yeah.
Right,
um
because they're looking at the
Judge is,
charges
like,
and they're like,
rifling through
wait,
her
what?
Where are we?
I know, because I was curious if I had the right case, and I had to say like, yes.
Yeah, and the prosecutor's like,
Prosecutor's like, oh no.
Yeah. um and I told the judge, I was like, yes, I want those questions. And I feel very fortunate that we got the judge that we did. We didn't know which judge we were going to get until the day before.
Wait, so hold on. Why don't you know which judge you're going to get until the day before?
Because that's just how we do things here.
So you just have it set for trial, and then they tell you, okay, you're going to this room.
Yeah, so I know the trial date is going to be on a Tuesday. Monday afternoon after 3 o'clock, we go on the court website and try to see who the judge is going to be.
whoa.
That gives me anxiety.
So you
So
can't
how do you-
counsel on
Yeah, you
like
can't. You
trial
can't.
tax. You can't counsel on like how the judge is going to be with evidentiary rulings. You can't
What if
plan
you want to
any
do a
of that.
bench? It's the same with the bench.
Yeah, you just kind of have to wait
Well,
until
how do you know if you want to do a bench or not? If you can't,
you got to prepare for both.
I'm sweating.
I'm yeah.
Get me out of this Zoom room.
Whoa.
And Anne Arundel, at the time, I think we had 12 judges, so you could have gotten anybody.
Whoa.
Are you like, please not this one, please not this one, please not this one? Not the one you got, but just like, is there one where you're like, oh, please not them?
I mean,
I guess if you're doing a jury, I don't know. I don't know how much the judge matters except for sentencing.
Yeah, there's always judges that you're just like, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a jury trial with every judge in the county so far, and every single one of them has their strengths and weaknesses, and you just kind of learn them and figure out how to work it.
That
Mhm.
blows my mind. It's wild that like every time we talk to somebody from a different jurisdiction or a different state, there's like a new wild things. We've
It's
only
so
practiced in
interesting.
Ohio. Yeah, and so it's like that's like very normal to us. And so when we like hear we're like, whoa, like we talked to some woman in Texas, and
Texas always comes through.
the juries decide sentencing too.
I heard that episode.
Yeah.
That blew my,
Like, and
that
then
blew
the
my mind.
prosecutor called my client to the stand.
We spent so long on that. We were like, whoa, we had to edit it down so much. So did you have any moments in voir dire that stuck out to you?
Not Not really. The voir dire was pretty straightforward. I also asked that if anybody in the panel would speak Spanish, because I wanted to make sure that if they did speak Spanish, that they would only rely on the interpreter's interpretation of what was said.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
because I mean, I grew up in South America, and I traveled other countries that speak Spanish, and like it is not all the same. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is a diversity of the language, and so I wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any misunderstanding about what was said by the interpreter. And I mean, it wasn't an issue in this trial, so
Nobody
it,
spoke Spanish.
I think it was like one person who said that they spoke Spanish, but it wasn't a whole lot, and so you would rely on the interpreter, and they're like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Cool.
okay.
Where did you
So
grow
it
up,
wasn't.
Felipe?
I grew up in Chile.
Cool.
Gosh, I mean, I was raised there as a kid, and then we moved to the States, and then we moved back, and I was there from like 10 to 17. So I didn't move to the States until I was about 17, 18 years old.
And you just finished high school and then went to college?
I went into the Navy. I did 5 years with the Navy, and then I went to
Okay.
um. So yeah, voir dire, no issues, and like I said, the judge. I was glad that we got this judge because at first I was a little hesitant or a little concerned, only because they used to be a prosecutor in this county and they were a prosecutor for a very long time. But I'd already had a trial with them before and had no issues. Like they ruled the right way, even when they went against me. I wasn't like, oh man, that was egregious. I did not doubt that they could be fair and impartial and that they weren't just gonna like bend over to help the state or whatever.
Good.
One of my favorite
Addition,
judges is a former prosecutor. Not my like they just I feel like sometimes they're just good on the burden and the
I and I clerked for a judge who was the elected prosecutor for a different county, and I mean, he told me he was like, when I was a prosecutor, we would always ask for whatever it is that we wanted, and figured it would be the judge to rule on it. And then he's like, and then I became a judge, and he's like, that weighs on you. Like,
yeah.
it's not easy. So, but this particular judge also their job was they were the sex crimes prosecutor. And
Mm.
I figured they would be much more willing to understand or believe my client, or what I was positing was what happened, that they wouldn't just dismiss it. Um, and
Right. So
so,
they'd be more open to your
mhm.
to overruling objections from the state if you were trying to get into something, or maybe better in sentencing if there was some type of if there was a conviction. Is that
Right.
why? Yeah.
I just figured that they wouldn't discard my client's version, that they would take it seriously in a
Mm-hmm.
way that the state had not up to this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important that they get that. And you've kind of tested the water some on voir dire with the questions you've posed. But the judge, I think for that reason too, will be more open-minded as to the question of relevance, just for anything you're about to ask on cross, because they're aware of just a way broader universe of the theory of defense than they would know ahead of time until your client took the stand.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do think
And
it's pretty despicable that the state dismissed your client's version of the story just so like in full. They say that they're, for most prosecutors that I know at least are, they feel like the victims are their clients and they have this duty to people to like keep them safe or whatever. That was in air quotes. And obviously in this case, it just shows that there's this one track mind where it's like a defendant is a defendant and a victim is a victim, and that there's no two ways about it.
correct. This office does a lot of that. They're always talking about how they need to represent victims and everything. And the entire time I'm thinking, you have a victim and you're prosecuting.
Yes. Yeah.
And can you say more? I remember yesterday you said something like pretty crass that they had said about when you were trying to encourage them to look into how your client might have been a victim in this situation when he was sexually assaulted.
So that was later. Once we were in trial, like there were other attorneys that we can mention it later, but like they would be like, oh, the old blowjob defense. type stuff.
That's so
It's like,
messed up.
Yeah, that's messed up. That's hard. Um, are you, just to back up a little bit, something you just said reminded me of this. Are you, feeling like, I don't know, people say like, oh, the old blowjob defense. Do you feel kind of defensive of your client? Do you feel like sort of like a connection with him, going through this journey with him? Or,
I I mean, at the time, I just kind of rolled my eyes at it. Like I wasn't getting too riled up about it because I frankly don't expect a lot from the
right.
state's attorney's office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I talk to people in my office, but I also talk to, people that aren't lawyers. Like we have friend groups or whatever, and I'll ask them like, "Hey, what if I told you this?" Because they're just regular people. They didn't make the mistake of going to law school. And
right.
I just like I asked them like, if these were the facts and if you heard this, if this was a trial, like what are you thinking? And almost everybody believed that my client was a victim, and and so I believe that my client and his version would be able to come out. And I was like, look, we're gonna see what happens at the end of this trial. Like I was confident at the end of the trial we were gonna see what happened.
Right. And those people, right, are jurors. They're not lawyers, and they're not your jurors, but they're potential jurors. And so you want those, like, what, the layman opinion. So
Yeah.
Although
did you
we had two lawyers on our jury.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Were
Did
they
they
criminal
say?
lawyers?
No, I don't have notes, but I don't think they were. I think they were just like civil lawyers.
And they got on the jury?
They were on the jury.
Did you use any strikes?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember. Like my system generally is, if I have like a down arrow for a person, like it is, yeah, you got to go. It was a 10 and 5 strikes case.
What does that
Um,
mean?
So we had, because the maximum penalty is 25 years, the defense gets 10 strikes, the state gets 5 strikes. Uh,
Whoa.
and yeah, normally it's 4 and 4. So for anything under 20 years, I think, yeah, anything under 20 years, it's 4 and 4. Anything over 20 is 10 and 5. And anything where the penalty is up to life, it's 20 and 10.
Wow. That is so, it blows my mind because like that's just a procedural technicality that we connect to justice. We're like, oh, this client has more on the line, so it's really important that they truly feel represented by a jury of their peers. And then you go to a different jurisdiction, that's not a thing at all. And it's just like these,
Yeah.
we're like, it happens this way because it's justice.
It's just
And then you like
arbitrary.
cross
Yeah.
the state line, and they're like, no, we do it this way because it's just like it's so arbitrary. But that's fascinating that the number of strikes correlates to the maximum penalty.
Yeah. And that's by law, like an actual statute.
Wow.
In the end, did you like your jury?
I did. I did. Um, I, they, I mean, no spoiler alert. I mean, they went our way.
Yeah.
But
Thank God.
Hey, don't tell him. Yeah. I was on the edge of my seat. I really was.
but I think we had a good jury. I don't remember having bad feelings. Like I've had some jurors where I was just like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is not good.
Yeah.
I don't remember that from this.
Was the jury receptive to the conversation on can men be sexually assaulted?
Yes, yes, they were. They didn't even stand up. Like there was nobody in the jury pool that said that would bother them or that they would have a problem doing it. Like they were very just open to that idea, and yeah.
Good. Were they comfortable talking about it, or did you have to do most of the talking?
Well, no, he doesn't do the talking.
Oh, duh.
I don't do any of the talking. It's
Sorry.
just the question is asked. Nobody stood up for those questions, and then so we didn't really have to explore it all that much.
Sorry, what do you mean stand up for the question?
Like
Oh,
they
so
say, does anyone have a problem with this? And then the people stand up.
Yeah.
So
So
it starts as just a bar of like, do you have a problem with this? So they have to kind of
yes.
make an affirmative step to make themselves known
Yes.
that they have an issue with a topic.
Yeah, so the way it works is we bring in the jurors, they're just numbered. The judge says, I'm going to ask you these questions. Question 1, they ask the question. If the answer is yes, you stand up, you say your juror number, you sit down. And we do that for all the questions. After that, we bring them in one at a time. They go up to the bench, and we have like a personal private conversation about you said yes to all these questions. Can you explain that a little bit more? And then we just, after we've done enough of that, we pick the jury.
Okay. And that can make it really hard to know too, though. Someone's, excuse me, I have a cold.
Do you need to blow your nose or
Yeah,
anything?
someone's actual thoughts and feelings, because it's one thing to be cold called, like, hey, juror number 4 just said this. Like, what do you think about that? And they have to say something versus like, do you want to publicly identify yourself as homophobic? Like, it's going to be hard for someone to stand up, even if they have reservations about that topic.
I've seen jurors stand up for some of those questions, other cases where you think there's nobody's going to admit to this.
Mhm.
Nope, they do. They're
That's
like, yeah, I
true.
have a
Jurors
problem.
are honest.
They probably just don't want to be on the jury.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably just want to leave.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else for voir dire before we move on?
No, we, picked the jury and we were ready to do openings.
All right, then let's talk about openings. Tell us about the state's opening first.
So the state's opening was just basically
Is he frozen for you?
Yeah. But you're not.
Okay. Wait,
Oh,
you were frozen.
You froze for a second.
okay, yeah, so did you.
So start with the state's opening. So we
Wait, sorry, can I
did
blow
it.
my nose really quick?
Yeah, go blow your nose. Go blow your nose. All right, hold please. I thought she had a cold. She sounded a little nasalier than usual. We're not going to ask you to like recount your entire opening or anything.
Oh
So.
no, I'm not.
Okay.
No, my opening was pretty short.
Oh man. All right, she's back. Oh no, we lost
Yeah.
Felipe.
Sorry.
Should
A
we?
little head cold. I feel fine, but I'm
When
stuffy.
did you get that head cold? Like yesterday?
No, I could feel it yesterday morning.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
He's back.
he's back.
Right. I don't know what's going
Perfect.
on with the connection right now, but just keep going.
We're gonna power through.
Yeah. The good
Okay,
thing is
so-
it just drops you back in and doesn't affect anything.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fine. Tell us about the state's opening.
The state's opening was pretty short and standard. Just, we know who did it and we know what happened because the complaining witness said so, and we found the defendant, in the bedroom. There's not a lot of mystery to this. Believe the complaining witness. Basically said, okay, he's selling cars. He goes to play poker with his friends, goes home, goes to bed, and client tried to rob him. And
It's crazy that they're going with the poker thing. Like, did they not watch the evidence?
I didn't have a problem. I was like, look, if they really want to go with
Yeah.
this, if they want to do it, that's fine with me, because they're gonna get it impeached and stuff like that. So I was fine with it. So yeah, they said that my client climbed the walls, the exterior, broke in, robbed the guy, and that complaining witness overpowered him. That was it. It was a short opening.
All right, tell us about your opening.
Mine was short too. I basically was like, look, ladies and gentlemen, the state wants you to believe this version of events. That is not what happened. This is what happened. And I gave my client's version of events and didn't, mince words at all. I said, my client met the guy. He was invited in. They had drinks. He passes out. He wakes up and the guy is performing fellatio on him, which is why they had a fight and everything. And I just said it. Because, I mean, what benefit would it be to not tell the jury that that's what's coming?
Yeah.
No, that's a good opening. What did they react at all? I mean, that's as a juror, you're like, whoa, wait.
Yeah, you just
left
heard
turn.
two completely different stories in opening.
You're back.
Yeah, I'm gonna just disconnect from. Okay, I just disconnected from my MOPD and I'm now on my phone, which has better signal.
Okay.
Cool.
So we were saying that it's kind of
Yeah, the jury just heard two
crazy.
completely different stories in opening. Like, one person stands up and they're like, okay, and the other person stands up and they're like,
Did they react at all?
I think if they reacted, I think it was just like with open eyes, one of those just like,
Mhm.
oh, but nothing really that stood out. And
I wonder what they were thinking during the state's opening. They're like, why did we talk about
Yeah.
Sexual assault on a man. They're like, wait, what?
Jury's also like, am I in the wrong room?
Yeah.
Like, why was it so weird in the beginning and now we're talking about a robbery?
Yeah. And so I told him, it's like, look, you're gonna hear the evidence, so just do me a favor, pay attention, keep an open mind, and just use your critical thinking. Listen to what you do hear and see, but also think about what you're not seeing and hearing. And at the end of this, like, you're gonna find my client not guilty. Like, there's no way you can find them guilty, basically. Like, and that was it.
All right. So state's first witness, who do they call?
They call the complaining witness. He, takes the stand, and he just again gives his version of he's a car salesman in the local Annapolis area. He got off work around 7. He goes to play poker with his friends that he's known since childhood. Like 10 minutes away, they play poker till like 11-ish. He goes home, gets home, and has some dinner, and he goes to bed. And the next thing he does is wake up when he says that he sees the door to his bedroom open, and it's my client walking in with a knife in his hand. And on his hand, he has a sock and is holding the knife with his sock hand.
And he scaled the wall with a knife, with a sock on his hand with a knife.
No, so the state's version is that my client, who is not only capable of climbing these walls and must be a dedicated, cat burglar, which is a term they use to describe my client, a cat burglar.
Cat burglar?
Yeah,
Have you heard of that?
No, does that mean like you're a cat and a burglar, or does that mean you steal cats?
I think it's like an old 19. It's
I don't understand which one the adjective goes.
Is it an acronym?
It's like an old timey way of describing people who like break in by climbing and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Exclusively on third floors.
I guess.
Yeah.
And but he's such a dedicated like climber and robber, but he needed to go into complaining witness's kitchen to grab the knife that he was going to use for the robbery. So that kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you're going to rob somebody, wouldn't you bring your own weapon rather than depend on whatever materials?
Like, I hope they have something there.
Right.
Yeah, there's
Hope
no
they have a gun
BYO.
laying right by the door.
Hopefully this house I'm breaking into has weapons inside.
Right. And
That's plan A.
yeah. And the state at some point the state was like, this guy, he's in, all black, he's wearing the typical thief burglar getup, all black. But my client's wearing like black shorts, a white bucket hat, and the black shirt that he's wearing has this like very large white like drawing or design, which kind of isn't what you would expect. Like it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it wasn't like the all black. So, but
Can
back
you imagine
to
someone breaking into your house in a white bucket hat? You're like, are
like
you
bold.
lost?
Like, this guy's a cat burglar. So on direct, it was just basically what the state had been saying the whole time, that
Yeah,
anything
that
different.
well, he said that my client, sock in hand with the knife, he pokes him, and then he somehow with the other hand is able to unclasp the bracelet that is on the complaining witness's wrist. And it's the kind of one that you need 2 hands to like hold and open. He's like, no, he did it one-handed. He took it from me. And then he started rummaging.
As a cat.
Yeah, and he started rummaging through my bedroom, looking for things. And it wasn't until my client supposedly whipped out his cell phone to take a picture of the complaining witness. And the complaining witness is like, I'm going to rush him and take the knife away and fight him and stab him in the leg.
That story makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
CW is saying that client, in the midst of all this, tried to take a photo of him?
Yes, that he took out a cell phone and stood over trying to take a picture of the complaining witness.
This
Like a
guy's never
selfie?
watched like one cop show in his whole life. He does not know what a home invasion robbery would look like. Like he was taking pictures. Is that right? And he unclasped my bracelet with one hand. That's a thing, right, guys? That's what people do.
It's just a lot of stuff is happening that doesn't make a lot of sense.
So let's talk about your cross then.
So on Cross, it was mostly just okay, talk to us about this poker night that you did. And so he's like, yeah, I did it with this one friend of mine. That's where they did it. And I was like, who else did you do it? He couldn't name a single person. I was like, these are your friends from childhood and you can't name them from your poker night? And he's like,
He couldn't just make it up like he was making everything else
well,
up.
Yeah. It could have been like Sharon was there.
Yeah, and Felipe Gonzalez. Oh wait, that's you.
Yeah.
And Judge so and so was there. Wait,
And so
just looking around the room.
And the Officer Jones.
And
redirect, they were able to like refresh his recollection with like a text chain or something like that. And he said like, oh, one of the people had his very same name. I was like, I'm sorry, you can't even.
we had clients. Name?
No, the
I mean, sorry,
CW's name.
PW.
I was like, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
One of your friends from childhood has your name and you can't even remember that name? Like, come on, man. And he said like, yeah, and then we left. I left around 11 after we played poker. It was, and I go home and I go to sleep, and I was like, okay. Well, do you remember having a conversation with a detective? And he was like, yeah, it was a few days after. He's like, yeah, I I didn't impeach him as well as I could have. I instead used like refreshing recollection, but we got to the same point, whatever. But he
Hmm.
eventually had to like admit in front of the jury that like he had never mentioned the poker night prior to like a week before trial. He had never mentioned poker night. That he had actually what he had told the detectives was that he got home at 9, saw his parents, that they left at 10, and he had dinner. He changed that entire like evening between when he got off work and when 11 o'clock. He changed it completely. Um,
Did he give any type of explanation like, well, I lied to the cops initially because yada yada, I didn't want my parents to be mad or something? No.
no, he didn't. Just he's like, yeah, I said that, and I was like, okay, you know.
Great.
So
Nothing further.
what else? I don't remember. Oh yeah, I mean, at some point I asked him, isn't this what actually happened? And just, asking him questions about my client's version of events. And I was like, you performed fellatio on my client while he was asleep without his consent. And he goes, what is that? And I was like, fellatio. He's like, I don't know what that means. And I and I,
You're like,
and I was
don't make me
and I
say
had to. I was like,
it.
did you give him
Yeah.
a blowjob? And he was like, oh no, I would never. It's like, okay, dude. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I'm always like, I don't know. I'm always so torn about whether or not to bring up like the alternate story to the prosecuting witnesses or the complaining witnesses. Like, they're going to say no. You know what I mean? So I don't even know if it's worth it in cross, but it sounds like you got to give them a chance to react.
yeah, but based on how he was like answering the questions, I don't think the jury really liked him. I don't think they found him
Yeah.
all that credible. So,
Well, he's not.
no,
That's probably
You're
no, he
why.
kidding.
wasn't. Yeah. Um, but during complaining witnesses' testimony, they played the video of him looking all upset and like, talking about, oh, this is what happened. And they played one of the officers' body worn camera so you could see like a layout of the entire apartment. And during that, they got to the part where the officer enters the bedroom where my client is dying on the ground. And my client, that was the first time he had actually seen himself from that night because he had blacked out prior to that. And he immediately started breaking down and crying. And we had to take like a 30-minute recess.
Did you have a chance? Did
Oh
you
God.
prime your client for that? Did you tell him like, "Hey, you're gonna see this"? Did you know that he
I
hadn't would react like that? Did you think that?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't think that would come in. I didn't really think that it would be a necessary part. I mean, at some point, I objected and said like, hey, like we've gone beyond what is showing the layout of the apartment. Like we're now seconds into my client dying on the floor while people try to save his life. So I don't see how this needs to continue. And the judge,
You don't want the jury to see that?
I'm there was enough evidence from everybody that it didn't need to be seen.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, I like nobody. We weren't disputing that my client was there. We weren't disputing that my client had been stabbed. Like our position was that like the only reason he was there was because the guy consented to his being there,
Right.
and so it didn't really like bother me. Um, but I looking back, I mean, yeah, I should have warned him about it. But again, I didn't think it was going to come up. But um,
Mhm.
after he had a chance to like catch himself and calm down, like it didn't happen again. I mean, I explained like we're gonna there is a possibility that you are going to see this again, or you might see other stuff, and whatever happens, man, just like try to keep it together. Don't look if you don't need to. Like just like I got this,
Yeah.
but like um
I feel for your client. That's really traumatizing.
but yeah,
All of it. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's kind of no more powerful image for the jury to see, painful as it is, of your client seeing himself in that moment.
yeah. Um but it it I was a little worried about it, but in the end I don't think it affected the jury all that much.
Yeah.
And I mean, oh, so the complaining witness was talking about how like, oh, I would never have alcohol, I don't drink, my parents would disapprove of it. But in the pictures from the body worn camera, you could see liquor, an alcohol bottle in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Like,
This guy.
He's like, oh, he scaled the wall with it and put it there
you,
before
you
he
know,
took my stuff.
and
This
so
guy's not thinking anything through.
no.
Be a better liar.
So he, the state did some redirect, but it didn't really, nothing really interesting or anything. It was just more about like, oh, your parents, they don't approve of you drinking alcohol. Like the redirect, I actually was like, this guy's kind of asking questions that are good for me because it's showing why the complaining witness might come up with a narrative that is the one that we
Right. Like,
have.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, my parents are going to disapprove of me, like, sexually assaulting people and drinking in their house. So I got to make some stuff up.
Yeah. So
Exactly. States like your mom wouldn't want you to rape anyone, right?
It's like, oh
yeah,
no, that's why I made this whole thing up. Who's your next witness then? Or not your,
yeah.
who's the state's next
The
witness
state's
then?
next witness is one of the friends of the complaining witness, the one where they played the poker game.
Oh, so he got his friend to
Yeah,
commit
yeah,
perjury?
yeah. He
Oh.
got a friend to go up there and say, "Yeah, my friend, it was me and a bunch of other guys. We played poker, and he left at 11, and yeah,
Did he
Wow.
remember this guy's name who was
Yes.
gonna
yeah, yeah,
testify right after?
yeah,
Oh yeah, they were there. McKay, would you commit perjury for me? Would you if I
Yes.
asked you to be a witness? You
Yes.
would? Okay.
But we have
you
to
heard it.
first decide what names we're naming of the other people
Okay, yeah,
involved.
yeah, yeah. Of course, I'd be like,
Yeah,
I
Dallas
don't remember who
testifies.
was
Who else was there?
there.
McKay. Who else?
Uh,
Don't know. McKay testifies. Dallas and
I don't know.
what'd you say?
What'd she say? Can I get a read back of that transcript? Anyway, so this person's just completely perjuring
and the
themselves.
guy testified for 5 minutes.
What was your cross?
Just what time did the guy leave? And the friend did do him a solid because he said it was sometime between 10 and 11, trying to give him as like broad a window as possible. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, good for you. So yeah, 10 at the earliest, 11 at the latest, and it's a 15-minute drive. Okay, thanks, whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
he was up and down 5 minutes tops.
I mean, what do you really do with that? Like, if it's all a lie, there's like
Exactly.
not much.
Like
Yeah.
I wasn't sweating it.
All right. So who do they put up next
The
then?
next and the last witness for the state was their lead detective. So,
All right, the big
the big
guns.
guns. And this detective had been sitting in the courtroom for the entirety of the trial. But they didn't call a single one of the first responding officers. They didn't call a single one of the EMTs. They didn't call anybody else. Um,
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, like that they only have three people for a home invasion, armed robbery, a charges that carry more than, would you say, like maybe 45
yeah,
years
45 years.
total?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, that
mean,
is
they're only putting three people
Hmm.
on. That kind of blows my mind.
And we did have to, I mean, we were able to enter a stipulated exhibit, which was one of the first responding police officers, the one that looked at the ring camera. They got COVID the day for
Oh,
trial, and they wanted the ring camera in. I wanted the ring camera in. They didn't know why I wanted the ring camera in. And I said, look, I'll stipulate to the part you want if you stipulate to the part I want. And we did it. So,
okay.
um,
great.
so the detective comes in, and I've known of this detective from when I started as a public defender doing like misdemeanors. One of the first time I ever came across this detective, he had recently transferred to Annapolis police from Baltimore. He was like the Baltimore City school police officer. Um, and he was working in Annapolis, a case that I had, and in the body worn camera, you can see him like harassing my client in like an alley in Annapolis while another cop prevents the friends from like trying to like help their friend or whatever. And ever since then, I've had a problem with this particular officer. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and but he he really thinks highly of himself. Um, he's wearing a turtleneck and chain with like a suit.
Wait,
Yeah, yes, yeah,
what?
yeah,
That is the outfit of someone who really thinks highly of themselves
yeah.
in court, turtleneck and
I
Wait,
chain.
think my favorite part of this podcast is when people describe the outfit of the lead detective.
It's always something
yeah,
crazy.
It is 12 out of 10 every time.
yeah. Turtleneck chain, and he's got like a jacket. I can't remember if it's like a suit jacket or a blazer, but it's one of those. And like
He's definitely strapped.
and yeah, oh yeah, he's very built and everything else, and he's wearing like the tightest golf pants. And he walks up, takes the
Is
stand.
this his big moment or something?
Yeah, and his demeanor is, just too cool for school. He is, just like a slow cadence, and he's got like a gravelly voice. And so they're like, "What is your job as, lead detective?" He's like, "To pick up the ball and run with it." Just
Oh God.
like
So
that
cringe. Like just be
that
normal.
was an actual thing he said.
You did a really good impression there.
That was really good. We're gonna do
Yeah,
his full
you took me.
testimony.
I got the full picture. I was transported to the
Then
courtroom
what
with
did they
that
ask you?
Yeah. And so
one.
the state just asked him, like, what is, you're the lead detective. What did you do? Like, tell us about your investigation. He's like, "Oh, I got the call. I went to the crime scene. I looked at the apartment." He's like, "Yeah, looks like an apartment." He went to the bedroom. He's like, "Yeah, looks like a lot of blood in the apartment." He went outside, looked at the back, and just sort of looked at the concrete lattice, and it's like, "Yeah, somebody could maybe scale that, in theory." And that was it. Like it
What?
was. I swear to you, it was the most bare bones.
My mind is blown. This I feel like a kindergartner could do the same type of
Yeah.
investigation.
At some point,
Better.
There's a wall. There's some blood.
yeah,
This is an apartment. There's a crime.
exactly.
Crime has been committed.
Yep.
Dust off hands. Signs after.
My job is done here.
Yep.
I've carried this ball. I've picked up this ball and I've run with it.
Right.
Or whatever the quote
They're
was.
like, and what'd you do next? He's like, I can't talk about
Yeah, exactly.
that. Well, you're on the stand. So.
At some point, the state's attorney tried to get the detective to testify about things that other officers saw and or did, and I objected. And like we go up to the judge, and the judge is like, "Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to introduce a lot of hearsay." And he's like, "Well, he's the case detective. He could do that." And
Wait, was it this prosecutor's first day?
no. There are a lot. I've had this issue with a lot of other prosecutors where this theory is that if one officer sees it, like that knowledge is passed on to like all the other cops
It's
involved.
like
They
imputed.
act like course of investigation is a hearsay objection.
Yeah.
It's like, and many judges are like, oh, okay, course of investigation. But what else is a
No.
hearsay exception is if you're wearing a gold chain, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. And the judge did not let the detective do that. She was like, no, you're not going
Good
to
for
do
her.
that. Yeah. And the reason why they were trying to do that is because one of the officers recovered items, right, that were in the bedroom. The complaining witness's watch and bracelet. And the complaining witness.
What was like, but the complaining witness's watch and bracelet was in his own bedroom?
Yeah. So they pull out as state's exhibit, in an evidence bag is the watch and the bracelet. They're like, hey, do you recognize these? And he's like, yeah, that's my watch. That's my bracelet, And they're like, okay, great. It's in evidence. But then they were trying to get the detective to say that those items were recovered from my client without any sort of explanation or testimony about how those items were recovered.
Okay.
So we don't know if it, like, they were trying to say he got it from the defendant. He got it from the defendant. They're like, you don't know that. There were so many items in the bedroom. Like, you don't know if the cop just like picked it up because it was close to my client, if it was near my client, if it was somewhere else. We just know that it was recovered, but we don't know how.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what they were trying to get the detective to say. They wanted him to say like, no, they got it from his person, but they couldn't.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how he would have said it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so what was your cross like of this detective?
So I basically asked him, I was like, you knew about the Ring camera footage? And he's like, yeah. And you've been in court, so you saw the body worn camera that shows that they only went to like 2:15 in the morning. He's like, yeah. Did you bother to go back and try to see more footage? And he was like, I went back, I left a card, and they never got back to me. I was like, okay, all right.
He's like, if it didn't happen in the moment, I didn't do it. Yeah, I'm busy.
I left a card.
I left a card and nobody got back to me. I'm like, okay, thanks.
I'm gonna start saying that more. I left a card. They never got back to me.
I asked him, did you measure the gaps in the lattice work? Did you put shoes in there? Did you do anything to like see beyond just it could have happened as far as the scaling? And he goes, no, like looking at me like I was crazy for even suggesting it. And he goes, and I was like, so you just thought, oh, it's possible, that's good enough for me. And he goes, well, there are certain people like rock climbers that can climb and they have special shoes that allow them. And I was like, did you find any shoes like that? And he was like, no. But I mean, and I got the detective to acknowledge that he talked to my client, and my client that he advised him of his right to a lawyer, and that's when my client said he wanted a lawyer. I asked him, but you knew that my client had an alternative version, and he's like, yeah, I looked into it. And I was like, and you looked into it how? He's like, I called the complaining witness.
And he told me it didn't happen.
Right, and he was like, he told me it didn't happen, case closed.
It's like, I left a card and they never got back to me.
Right, yeah. So that was it.
That was that?
Yep, and he comes off the stand and the state rests.
All right, so the state rests, and then you put your client on.
So he came off the witness stand right around lunch. So what we did is we advised my client of his fifth, and then we broke for lunch.
So the judge advises him of his fifth?
No, I advised.
You just advised him?
Yeah, advised on the record. We go to lunch.
Oh, so you guys do that on the record. If your client is going to testify, you advise them of their Fifth Amendment right?
Right.
So
the jury was out. They left, and then we did all the sort of
just in case he
right,
like a CYA for the court or something.
Yeah, I mean, just to make sure, because they don't want, on appeal something happens or post conviction, whatever.
Right.
We come back. I do my motion for judgment of acquittal. That was very brief. I mean, the state's version, I knew was going to pass that threshold. So I just said, look,
right.
I don't see any evidence of forced entry, so no burglary, but just insufficient evidence. And the judge was like, yeah, denied.
Right. Just for the record. So how does so you break for lunch, Do you get a chance to check in with your client and see how he's feeling about how everything's going so far?
I don't remember if I went down to talk to him because he's still held. So he goes into like the holding center, the holding cells in the courtroom, and he's in civilian clothes. He's still in his wheelchair, but he's in civilian clothes. Because I speak Spanish, I just usually just talk to him right away, like right there, and I just like, hey, do you have any concerns? What do you think? Anything going on? But my client, like the entire time, he was like, no, I don't have any questions, and like he was just he was just very quiet throughout.
Okay, so that was his demeanor, kind of
Yeah,
quiet.
yeah.
Okay.
I always give my clients like a notepad so they can write or do doodles and stuff like that, and that's kind of what he was focusing on.
Okay.
But yeah, it was that was it.
And he's been in a wheelchair the whole trial.
Yeah, whole time. So we come back, do motion for judgment of acquittal. It's denied. We re-advise him. He says, "Yeah, I want to say everything that I've been trying to say since the beginning." And so he's ready to go.
Yeah, he has his
Yeah.
day. Like
Yeah.
that's to me, I don't know. I mean, I know this ends in a not guilty, but he's so vindicated
Yeah.
from that.
Um,
Yeah.
and jury comes in. He's in the witness stand, and we're off. And I just ask him, from the beginning, like, how long had you been staying at that apartment complex? When did you first get there? Like, how do you know these people? And like through his family. And he just told step by step by step the progression of that night from the moment he got there after work with his family, walking the streets, looking for a liquor store, coming back, his conversation with the complaining witness, and how, and at no point did he like trash the complaining witness. He was like, yeah, the guy was really nice. He was very friendly. I was, I was convinced. I went to his apartment, but at no point did I break and enter. At no point did I, um, do anything, or did he do anything? I didn't think anything wrong was happening. The state on cross of my client tried to make a big stink about the fact that, so my client had one black and mild that he had been smoking and another black and mild that he had not smoked and that he was saving for later. And the complaining witness was like, hey, do you have another cigarette that I can have? And my client said no, because he didn't want to give him the second one. And on cross, the state's attorney made a big deal. Like, you lied to him about how you didn't have another one when you did. You lied from the beginning.
So damning.
Their only impeachment is that someone doesn't want to share a cigarette.
So, okay. And my client, he explained, like, I remember what floor, I remember the apartment room number, and I remember where he like described in detail the layout of the apartment,
Yeah, because he wouldn't know the apartment number if he went in through the window.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he just he described the liquor bottle and like the process and like where the guy got the knife. He described everything in detail. He explained, that he went onto the balcony, that he stood and walked around while smoking. He said the movie that they were watching, which when I asked him at the very beginning, he's like, yeah, we were watching a movie. And I was like, what movie were you watching? He said, you're not going to believe me when I tell you. I'm like, well, just tell me then. The movie was Titanic, which I was like, okay, that seems like not the kind of movie I would expect the two guys to be watching, but okay.
Right?
As
Yeah, that should have
tragic
been
as
his
this story
first
is,
red
can you
flag.
imagine all this actually going down in that apartment with that soundtrack?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting stabbed and my heart will go on is
Oh
not on my
no.
bucket list.
God damn it.
But he testified. He did testify. He's like, yeah, we went into the complaining witness's bedroom, and the movie was playing, and it was like at the part where the boat is starting to sink. Like he like
That's like an omen.
he like knew where it was.
Yeah, right.
And he smokes the cigarette. He says, I think I'm gonna go home now. The complaining witness is like, no, stick around. Like, we're having fun. Just hang out. And he says, yeah, I went back in there and I laid on the ground and I passed out. And he then I asked him, and what happened next? And he collects himself, and he very like calmly looks at the jury, and he says, I woke up and the guy was sucking on my penis, and like my shorts were down. He was lying next to me. He was masturbating next to me. Like, and he's like, I hit him. I was trying to get up, pull my pants up. I said, we're going to fix this through the police. And as I'm trying to get out, that's when he kicks me or pushes me, and he attacks me, and he's holding the knife, and he's just, it's a harrowing story.
Yeah.
He's talking about
Yeah.
how the guy is like holding the knife, trying to press it into his chest, and he's holding on to, like, trying to prevent it from going. He's like, I lowered it down. It was going towards my stomach, and then the guy twisted the knife and it stabbed me in the leg. Like,
Oh
my
my
God.
God, your poor client. That just, it sounds so terrible.
yeah,
And then, and also being charged, and also having a jury trial, and also being in jail.
yeah,
Like, the injustice for your client
Yeah.
is disgusting.
and
Just disgusting.
he. It's not clear exactly when in the testimony, but client says that he is the one that called 911. And again, like the radio logs show that somebody called, and there was a language barrier, and the only person who would have a language barrier would be my client.
Yeah.
So
Could you get that in trial? No, right?
so
There's nobody who could
the
have got that in
state
trial.
got that in because they introduced the log. That was one of the first things they
Oh.
introduced in evidence. So I was like, oh, you want to
Sick.
do the work for me? All right.
Thanks, guys.
It's
So when your client is looking at the jury and telling them, in detail how he was attacked and sexually assaulted, are they reacting at all? Are you looking at them, or are you kind of focused on?
You could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
Like they were paying attention to every word he had to say, and
It was probably really emotional for them, and hard to listen to.
yeah. I mean, having to sit there. I mean, I'd heard this. I'd heard his version several times, and even still, you're just like, this is just an incredible story. Like, just the ordeal that he's having to relate.
Yeah.
And they were paying attention to everything he had to say. And he testified as to why it is that he asked for a lawyer from after his conversation with the detective. And he said, I never climbed the walls. I never did a crime. I was invited in. I did nothing wrong, and that was it. Like, and his testimony on direct, I think, was about an hour. Like, he was on there for a minute.
Yeah.
Talking.
So you did talk a little bit about cross and how they tried to impeach him, but how was the cross with your client? Because it's through an interpreter, right?
Yeah. So my client, very earnest guy. Like, you ask him a question, he's just gonna tell you yes, no, or why. Like, this is what I did. And a lot of the questions by the state were like attempts to trick him, like, oh, you say you did this, but isn't it actually this? And my client would just be like,
in that voice.
and my client would just be like, no, just no. And there, at one point, the state was trying to like confuse my client by asking a lot of like double negatives, or like, would it not surprise you to know that nobody else didn't find or smell, like all sorts of stuff. And
why can't they just try a case? Just try a case, okay? Just try the case. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. Just try the case.
And
Quit it.
But it was funny because I'm listening and I'm like, these questions don't really make any sense. Like, they're terribly phrased, but you could see the interpreter struggling and
oh my God,
trying to like interpret decently. And so my client would just kind of sit there and wait, and the interpreter would not use the exact same tone. So instead of this kind of like, oh, you lie, they would just be like,
yeah.
It was in like a neutral tone. So my client would just say, no, I don't understand. No.
I'll tell you what, you never realize how unclear you're being until you're trying to communicate through an interpreter.
Yep.
because they'll be like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "Hang on, how do I say this?
Yeah.
Can you just
Like, I need you to
explain? Can
imitate
you
the
just
tone.
explain what's gonna happen here? You've done this enough times. I don't know."
So so yeah, it was like my client. It really didn't. The cross examination did not hurt him. Like they're like, oh, you knew which room number it was, but you don't remember your brother's address. And he was like, well, I know the street name, and I know his room number, but I don't know like the building number. It's stuff like that it's just like, okay, like he doesn't have 100% perfect memory, but he does remember like the parts that matter. Like I understood what the state was trying to do, but it didn't happen.
Well, they didn't have much. I mean, I think it's very difficult to cross on something that's not your theory at all.
Right.
It's there's, you know what I mean? Like it's just you don't have that much to go on.
Yeah, they're just
Were
looking for
you
live inconsistencies for
Yeah.
impeachment. Yeah.
Yeah, not to like, apologize for them or anything, but I can't imagine that'd be tough.
Justice
I
for the
think.
state. That's why we brought you all here.
Oh, yeah, they should have their own podcast, right?
Oh,
Why do we get all the fun?
It's also called Another Not Guilty, only they're pissed.
Yeah, just trial losses. Okay, so your client testifies. He does the cross. Was there anything else about the cross that was notable to you?
I'm trying to think, but I don't think there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't even think I did real redirects. Trying to think. No, there was no further questioning.
Right.
And
So it
after,
went pretty well.
yeah, no, it went really well. I mean, he was on the stand for like 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and he testified really well. He didn't do anything, bad on cross. And after he got off the stand, the defense rested.
Good for him. He's fighting for his life up there. Good for him.
Yeah.
So defense rests. So we go into close. So who closes first? The state?
Yeah, so we went over jury instructions. We didn't get through all of them, so we came back the next day. So we're now on day 3. And
We
we
just did an episode where someone had a 7-week trial. So day 3 is
7 weeks. Oh my.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 weeks.
Oh. Um,
45 witnesses. Well, you just did a 50 witness trial, didn't you?
we just did a 3-week trial in February with like 50 witnesses. That
Jeez.
I cannot imagine more than twice as long. That
They only did it like 3 days of the week, so that's why it took so long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That seems nice.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of just want it to be over. But anyway, okay, so we're on day 3 and you're closing day 3.
Yeah, so we're doing jury instructions. We got the self-defense instruction in. That was the one that I wanted. And so we were good on that. And
Which charges would that affect?
it would have affected the robbery, the assaults, the armed robbery. I wanted it in because my client had said that he hit the complaining witness, but he did it because the complaining witness was sexually attacking him.
Right.
And I knew I was going to say that in closing. So
So the self-defense instruction is
I wanted
applicable
it.
anywhere there was an allegation of force.
So under the state's narrative, like there really wouldn't have been a self-defense claim because in their narrative, our client broke into the home. But in my client's version, that never happened. I wanted self-defense in because I wanted to cover or protect my client because I didn't want any jurors thinking like, oh, I believe the client, but he did say he hit the guy while he was performing fellatio.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure so that I could say the only reason my client hit that guy is because he was being sexually assaulted. It was more of a like covering my bases. Our version was the state's version never happened. All of these charges are nonsense. But I still wanted it in. And so state does their closing. Basically, they're like, believe the complaining witness, reasonable doubts need to be reasonable. A summary of the state's version, don't leave your common sense at the door. They always use that one.
I like they're saying
Um,
reasonable doubt needs to be reasonable after they just had a CW testify that client scaled 3 stories in a white bucket hat.
I
Right.
know. I was like, he, says, "Oh, this all comes down to credibility. Do you believe the complaining witness or do you believe the defendant?" He basically calls my client a liar the whole time. Just says you can't believe him. Oh, he's in the cat burglar outfit with his bucket hat. I'm just like,
God.
okay. And that was it.
Like, how would you be able to see the next rung if you have a bucket hat? Like, logistically.
I
I'm
never
just trying to
can.
think
That's
of how
why
that
I
would
don't do
work.
the
It
bucket
like
hat
is
when I do it
covering.
because I just can't
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you're close.
My close, I basically, reminded the jury like, hey, I told you, open mind, pay attention. It's not just what you see in here, but what you don't. There's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt that any of these allegations or any of these charges. I used the metaphor that I learned from a colleague. It's the frog in the box, where like, oh, you have a frog, it's in a shoebox. You put a fly in the box, you close the lid, you leave it for an indeterminate amount of time. You come back, you open it, fly is gone. Okay, you could reasonably believe that the frog ate that fly, right? But what if you look and you see, oh, wait a second, there's a hole in the corner of this box that's big enough for the fly to just kind of walk on through. You might have a doubt about whether or not that particular frog ate that fly. And then I said, ladies and gentlemen, the state's case is full of holes. And then I just started listing them. And
That's good. I
It's
might
really
use
good.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it worked, but I started with like the police investigation or lack thereof. Like they're only talking to the one guy who speaks English. They never got my client's version. They never looked at the ring camera for 12:30 in the morning. It's this one detective who does one phone call to the CW and kind of looks at the lattice work, and there's no follow up whatsoever. I talked about the 911 call that there's a language barrier. I just talked about all the things that the police did not do that they could have absolutely done. And, it showed in the pictures about like the alcohol bottle in the CW's room, the guy who says that he never has alcohol, never, touches alcohol.
Hmm.
Um, highlighted the differences in the versions of the CW, with the poker game, without the poker game, all that stuff. And the state in their closing, they had said, this, defendant, if you don't believe his version of events, he has to be guilty. Like, well, obviously, but then they're like, he has every motive to lie. He has every reason to come up with this narrative. He's been, making it up the whole time. And when I'm up there, I'm like, he has every motive to tell you the truth. He has been victimized. He has been, not helped. And he's trying to
Yeah.
explain his version of events. Like, he has every reason to tell you the truth. That's his motive, to tell you the truth. Um,
And by
and
that same logic, they have every reason to, or every reason to lie because he sexually assaulted someone.
exactly. I mentioned that we didn't hear from any of the responding officers. We didn't hear from any of the EMTs. I mentioned the knife. So the state had a picture of a knife that they said was the knife. My client testified and said, no, that's not the knife. And the picture of the knife, it's like a long, like almost like a fish knife.
Hmm.
And you look at it, it has no blood on it whatsoever. I'm sorry, but if this is a knife that's been used to poke one guy in the arm and then another person through the leg and it is squeaky clean, I have some doubts that that is the weapon in question.
Yeah. Especially if there's blood everywhere.
Exactly. Everywhere. And so I
Yeah.
told the jury, look, my client told you the truth. The complaining witness's version is not true. He panicked. He didn't expect my client to wake up during the sex crime. And this is what he did. He attacked my client and then, recovered enough, to like not stab him again. But he made up a lie uh, to sort of protect himself or to like not get in trouble. And I just said, look, my client was very credible. He gave you every possible detail of that night. So, find him not guilty. That's the only proper result, is for him to be not guilty of everything.
Yeah. And then did the state rebut?
Yeah, it was whatever. They didn't. The only thing that really bothered me is that they had a picture of the balcony from the outside, and it had like the floor mat and it had two footprints on it. Now, my client had already testified, that he had been smoking on the balcony or whatever, but what the state also did is they took a picture of my client's shoes, like from one of the body worn camera or like one of the evidence photos or whatever. And then through whatever program on like the next slide of the PowerPoint, superimposed the shoes over the footprints
What?
without any testimony, any expert, anything. And I immediately objected. It was like, they are,
Yeah.
and we
Hell
went
no.
like, absolutely not. And the judge is like, I don't think you can do this. And the
Yeah.
state is just like, why not? We do it for like tattoos and stuff. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I don't even know if those shoes like have the right tread. And the state even said, like, I mean, the treads don't match. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Right. Yeah, that's wild.
You know,
That's
and I must have been,
that's like win at any cost type of behavior.
yeah,
That's
and
not right.
I must have been really, really heated because even the judge was like, "Hey, let's bring the temperature down a little bit." I was like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
Like, you bring the temperature down.
So yeah, the objection was sustained. That was stricken and everything else. But no,
What
the
did they say to
rebuttal.
the jury to cure that?
No, they just said like, don't consider that. Like, it's not. That's not something
Yeah,
you
don't
should
consider
consider.
that clip art. I guess you don't have to say much. It looks
Yeah,
insane.
don't consider that. And that was it. So that was, I think that was like on the third day. That was right before lunch of the third day, roughly. Yeah, I think so.
That you guys ended, and then how long did they deliberate?
They deliberated until, so like at 4:45 in the afternoon, we got a note that had 5 questions on it.
Well, real quick before we get to your questions, I'm sorry. How did you feel after you closed? How did you feel about your case?
I felt that we had done as good a case as we could do under, everything that had happened.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a mix of things. You're just like like my client did all this good. I got the points out that I needed to make, but at the same time, I mean, you're like internally panicking because you start to think about, oh man, I forgot this one thing, or
Yeah.
oh my God, they did say something, and I didn't mention it in closing, but
Well, you just never know. That's the thing, is that you think you have a good case, you give it to the jury, and then you're like, are they gonna see it my way? Like,
right,
maybe they won't. Maybe they'll, maybe the lattice and the whatever other evidence they had, not much. Maybe the lattice and the CW story will be enough for them. And it kind of gets in your head a little bit too. You can kind of gaslight yourself.
oh,
Exactly.
And then when you win, you're like, oh yeah, I knew that before.
yeah,
I was never worried.
Yeah,
So okay, so let's get. Oh, sorry, McKay. Go
No, I
ahead.
was just gonna say, yeah, we have no idea who's in there, and we have no idea in the end who's actually gonna be the most vocal and
Right.
what they're gonna latch onto. And that's
Yeah.
oftentimes what it comes down to. It's who is the strongest personality back there and what did they think was important. And
It
we
is
don't know
scary
that.
after you talk to jurors. Like, we get a chance to talk to jurors, and sometimes they're like, well, I was the holdout, but then they all convinced me. I'm like, oh my God, what if it was somebody who like couldn't be convinced? Like, they're just, 12 people back there
Yeah.
being humans. It's
Yeah.
kind of scary. Okay, so
And how
they
was your client
deliberate.
feeling at the end of the trial?
I mean, I looked over, um, I mean, he was just writing down the Lord's Prayer,
Oh,
in Spanish. I'm just like, oh my God,
yeah.
yeah,
That's heartbreaking a little
yeah.
bit. Yeah.
So heavy.
And, or Psalm, I mean, writing.
Yeah.
And so, but I talked to him and, he's just like, it's in God's hands. And like, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, what happens. But he,
Mhm.
he just calmly, like, and that was his demeanor throughout most of the trial with that one exception. But, he just calmly was like, okay, like we'll wait. We'll wait.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, jury deliberations.
Yeah,
They had questions?
they did. At like 4:40, we get called back, and The prosecutor had left at 4 o'clock and had a different prosecutor stand in, which,
Wow, he really cares about his
yeah,
case,
the
doesn't
judge
he?
was a little annoyed.
Yeah.
He left at 4 because it was 4.
He just left, and
He had to go to the gym.
He's
He
like,
had
it's
to do some
4.
laundry.
yeah.
It's 4.
It's like I don't get paid enough to stay past
Can you
4.
imagine if the defense was like, it's
Oh,
4?
absolutely not.
Death by firing squad.
So they had a question. There was one note with 5 questions. They were like, did the state stipulate to like where the evidence in the bag, so the watch and the gold chain, is there a stipulation to where that came from? There was like a writing on the bag that wasn't very clear. They're like, what does this mean? And they asked, can you clarify the self-defense instruction? Can we be deadlocked on an individual charge, but not on all of them? And
Hmm.
where were the keys found? Like, was there an evidence ledger? That kind of stuff. And so I did not know how to like interpret all of those questions. I wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but um, we talked about them, but we didn't do anything. Instead, we just let the jury go home, and we continued that issue on the morning of the next day with the actual prosecutor and not the stand-in.
Yeah. I don't love the can we be deadlocked on one and not all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's scary because you're
I
like,
don't
what
like
did they
that one.
hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one I was kind of like,
They obviously were thinking a lot about the theft, right?
yeah.
Because they wanted to know about the jewelry. Did you end up answering the questions? I know a lot of times you just are like, no.
Yeah, we did
go
answer
back and
them.
figure it
So
out.
generally, we just said that you have the evidence and the information that you need to make your decisions. Just refer to,
Yeah.
we referred them to the evidence rule, just the general, evidence rule that they'd already been given, and they had copies of the instructions for their deliberations. And we just referred them, just refer to the instructions, that kind of stuff. It wasn't a big deal. It was pretty straightforward. Just continue your deliberation. You have what you need. Just boom.
And how much longer were they out after
Well,
the questions?
well, in the meantime, so in between their recess and starting on the 4th day, we got 2 more notes. One was just like, can we get more copies? But the other one was one of the jurors noticed when they were allowed to leave yesterday evening that they got notification on their phone that somebody who worked at the same dealership that the complaining witness worked at had been looking up their information on LinkedIn. And,
Shady.
and
That's actually kind of scary.
well, that was
Yeah.
the issue is, so we brought that juror in and they were like, yeah, like I didn't have my phone all day. I got it at the end of the day and this is what it showed. There was a lot of back and forth, and at some point I think, yeah, they brought their phone and we were like trying to see if we could figure out who it was, but they were doing it in like incognito mode or whatever.
Yeah.
But we knew
Not totally
Not
incognito.
totally, yeah,
just
no, that-
sort of, just sort of incognito. They didn't pay
Semi-cognito.
the full premium for like LinkedIn Plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the judge asked, the juror, like, is this gonna like assure them like all your information is kept by the court? It's not copied. We don't keep it. The attorneys give it back, and then we shred everything. And for a moment we were like, well, do they maybe know you? Like, did you recognize any? We were asking the juror, like, do you recognize anybody in the gallery? Because complaining witness had a bunch of his friends in the courtroom who, were like making snide comments and scoffing whenever they disagreed with something. And I looked up the dealership's website and looked up the employees, and every single one of the people that came to the trial was an employee of that dealership. I was like, okay, so he had them there to support him or whatever. But
Yeah.
but no, the juror, said that they could do it. I mean, I was freaking out because I was debating whether or not to ask to just keep a jury of 11 jurors, which you can do, but I'd never done before. But no, the juror said that they could do it, and about, I want to say 2 hours later, they came back with a verdict.
Right.
All right. let's talk about the verdict. So they come back with a verdict. What are you feeling?
I always tell my clients that, hey, no matter what, don't react. Just try to keep a calm demeanor, don't exclaim or anything like that, just in case. And it's you just stand there as you watch them walk in, and you're trying to read them for any sort of hint of like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah. Did they look at you? Did they do anything?
I don't remember. I try not to read too much into it. Like, obviously, if like a juror looks at you and smiles, like, oh yeah, like we won.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't. I feel like the jurors try to not look at you or whatever. I remember thinking like maybe they're gonna split the verdict. Maybe they're not gonna. I don't know. But at the same time, I was like, no, this is an all or nothing case. They either
Yeah.
believe my client or they don't. So we're either
Right.
going to get all guilties or all not guilties. And it really is going to come down to what are the first one or two verdicts.
Yeah.
And, so they call the case, foreman, and they just start down the roll. Do you find him guilty or not guilty, or guilty of home invasion? Not guilty.
Let's go.
You know,
Nice.
I'm just, breathing, but at the same time, you're just like, oh, it's got all these other counts we got to get through.
Yeah.
Right. Did your client react to the first one?
No reaction. And so they're going, first degree burglary, not guilty. Armed robbery, not guilty. And at that point, I'm starting to think, oh, there is no way that they're going to find him guilty.
Yeah.
And so I like turn, I look at him, and they're still saying not guilty, not guilty. And I'm telling him like, hey, like we're winning, like you've won, like this is, and they finally called all of them, and they were not guilties across the board. And I'm explaining to him what that means, and he starts, he finally starts crying.
Wow.
I'm crying with him. And the jury is thanked for their deliberation, and they are excused. The judge is like, anything else from the attorneys? Like, no, we're good to go. And then for a while, it's just me and my client, like in the courtroom by ourselves with the clerk.
Did the prosecutor react at all?
No, they just picked up their stuff and left.
Just another day at the office
Yeah,
for that guy.
no.
Yeah, it was never like real. It was all
Whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and everybody had been in the courtroom that day because it was a Friday morning, and that's when we do our statuses. So like all of the prosecutors were in the building. A lot of defense attorneys were in the building. I don't remember if there were people in the gallery. There usually are. And like that's when like one of the prosecutors, not this prosecutor, but a different prosecutor, this is when they went to me and they're like, oh, the old blowjob defense, like
Yeah.
while the jury's deliberating. I was like, man, whatever. So
messed up.
right. And I mean, to this day, it's been a year, and they'll still mention, the old blowjob defense. Like they're still bitter about it.
Yeah, they're sore losers. I'm sorry. They're sore losers.
But
not all of them, but some people.
Yeah.
And
so yeah, I told my client, like, this case is not gonna hold you anymore. You're gonna be released, and hopefully you'll get to go home. And I called his family and was like, yeah, he won. It's not guilty. He should be able to come home. And that was it. Just
How did his family react?
oh, they were happy. They were just just like, oh, how will we know? And it's like, well, you should get like a phone call. You should be able to let you know when he's out. And that was kind of it. Like I explained, he can get it expunged and all that other stuff, but he was just relieved that it was over, that he was relieved that the jury believed him.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And yeah.
Did the CW did they ever investigate the allegation of the sexual assault? Did he get in trouble?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. To this day, they never believed my client before. They're never going to believe him. They never looked into the client and into the CW. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he raped my client. And
Yeah.
whenever I go into the Annapolis area, like I see the dealership and I like relive that trial.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah, that's traumatizing for everybody.
and
Yeah, and he's just out there,
yeah,
getting away with
living
it.
his life. Who knows how many other people he's
Yeah,
tried doing this to or has done it to? Like,
Exactly.
right. Yeah, and it does, obviously this person is likely to become one of our clients one day, so I do have compassion for people. Um, but it's this mishandling of the situation by the state that creates these situations where people learn that they can use the system against other people, and there won't be consequences for them.
right. No.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have you kept in touch with your client? Do you know, is there any follow up with how he's doing today?
I I don't know because I found out later when I got a phone call from an immigration public interest firm that what happened is rather than my client being released, he was held by ICE and was
Mm.
moved to a detention center under ICE custody.
For
What?
And
these
That's insult to
accusations.
injury.
yeah, for these accusations, and um, you know, in talking to the and so I made sure to like tell the attorneys, like I gave them all the discovery, I gave them audio of the trial and explaining like no, like he was acquitted of everything because and a jury believed him over somebody else, and they were talking about different kinds of visas and what would be needed in order to do that, and what they would need would be an affirmative sort of declaration from either the Annapolis police detective, which the immigration attorney told me that they talked to that detective, and when they explained, what they were trying to do, the detective just kind of like laughed at them on the phone. And
Oh,
then,
sure. That's the last person who's going to have the humility to
right,
own that the wrong person was charged.
and then they reached out to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor basically said, if you try to press charges against the complaining witness for what my client said had happened to him, like we're just going to file perjury charges against him, which makes no sense.
It's insane.
But I mean, it just shows the willingness of the state to like to not concede that maybe possibly they made a mistake. And so I don't know. I tried keeping in touch with the attorneys, but I haven't heard from them, so I have no idea what's
Yeah.
going on.
You know, I feel like this a lot. Like sometimes with not guilties, it's like at what cost, right? Like the not guilty is great. It's wonderful. But there's so many collateral consequences that our clients have for just having contact with the system that it's can last a lifetime, even though they were found not guilty,
Right.
Yeah.
which is
But I
unfortunate.
mean, the only reason he's charged is because this complaining witness made up a lie about him, and that's
Yeah.
how he ended up in the system. Like, it's
Yeah.
absolutely not fair.
Yeah. It's not fair. Right. Well, thank you so much, Felipe, for telling us this story. Um, and telling us your client's story. I really appreciate it. Um, this is do you have a question, McKay?
No, yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, that is just a harrowing not guilty, and yeah, it's tragic, the outcome. It's still tragic.
Yeah, it is. This is the part of the show where we ask our guests what we call the ultimate question. Why did you become a public defender?
So it's not a long story, but when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, like every morning we had to cite the Sailor's Creed, and part of it involves like, I'm going to defend the Constitution and and support it. And I said it every morning, having no idea what the Constitution says, nothing really.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And after I got out, I was going to college and learning about, like what the Constitution is, what it says. And I was like, oh wow, that really is important. Learning about like the civil rights period. As a freshman, I was like, wow, lawyers have a role to play in making a fair, just society. And I was like, I'm going to go to law school. So like as a freshman, I knew I was going to go to law school, thinking I was going to be a civil rights lawyer. And then I go to law school, and I got a clerkship with the public defender's office in Maryland, in Anne Arundel County. And I was like, oh, I'll try it out, give it a try.
Yeah.
on the first week, I was like, I love this. This is
Yeah.
incredible. Meeting clients, seeing, going over the reports and everything, and just falling in love with the work. But like, I love being a public defender because of cases like this, where my clients have been accused of something and it's totally wrong, and somebody needs to stand up for them and represent them. I've had so many cases where the state just wants to say that my clients are the worst people, they're doing terrible things, and that is not the case.
Yeah.
And you know, somebody just getting to try to make this a fairer, more just society, one case at a time, is why I do it. I can't imagine doing anything else. It's how I got here. I representing people, keeping the state from just locking people up. I
Hmm.
cannot imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
There's no job like it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad
Yeah.
your client had you. I think of situations where same facts, same allegations, same charges, and client has an attorney who can't or won't try the case, can't or won't come prepared, a judge that doesn't know the rules of evidence or won't apply them, and just tragedies happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We really appreciate it. It was great having you on the show.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
me.
Honored to
Yeah.
talk to you. Phenomenal case.
Yeah.
Just,
Thanks.
yeah. That case is insane.
And that's wild. All right.
Yeah,
I'm
but
gonna
keep up the amazing work. It sounds like you have a lot of pots still on the stove. So we look
Yeah.
forward to
Yeah.
hearing from you soon
Yeah. We're not guilty.
on another NG.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Felipe.
Hey, Angiers. Thanks for listening to another episode of Another Not Guilty.
You can find us now on social media at Another Not Guilty on Instagram, probably Facebook, maybe TikTok.
Yeah, so
No.
we're just starting the social media. We're trying to ramp up the social media thing. So if you're curious about when our next episode's coming out, or want to see clips from episodes, or want to see some fun follow-ups, follow us on social media.